Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Wednesday, July 1st, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. In Riverside today, expect a high of 78.2 degrees with a low of 62.8 degrees. It should be a mild and pleasant day for the region. For those celebrating among our listeners, Happy Canada Day. Coming up on today's show, we are going to dive into how Donald Trump managed to amass billions through his involvement in the cryptocurrency market. We will also explore the ongoing controversy regarding why California continues to share DMV data despite significant pushback and concern from immigrant communities. Beyond these headlines, we will have a look at several other developing stories making waves today. There is a lot to discuss on today's program, so keep it locked right here for the full report on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning. New financial disclosures are shining a light on just how much President Trump earned from cryptocurrency last year. And the numbers are staggering. Ethan, welcome. What exactly did these filings reveal?
Good morning, Grace. So these disclosures came out on June 30th, 2026, just yesterday, filed with the U.S. Office of Government Ethics. And the headline figure is enormous. President Donald Trump earned roughly $1.4 billion from cryptocurrency and digital asset ventures during 2025, the first year of his second term. That single influx pushed his total crypto holdings past $1 billion.
$1.4 billion in a single year. How does that change his overall net worth?
It changes it dramatically. Forbes now estimates his net worth at $6 billion, up from $2.3 billion in 2024. Bloomberg's Billionaires Index goes even higher, placing it at $7.6 billion. So depending on who you ask, the president's wealth roughly doubled or tripled in 1 year. And crypto is the engine driving almost all of that increase.
Let's break down where the money came from. What was the single biggest source?
The largest piece involves his meme coin. According to NBC News, Trump earned more than $635 million from a licensing agreement with a group called Celebration Coins, which specializes in meme coins bearing his name. That revenue was routed through an entity called CIC Digital LLC. BBC News notes the $sign Trump meme coin launched just days before the January 2025 inauguration.
And how has that coin actually performed for the people who bought it?
That's the striking part. While Trump earned enormously, ordinary investors did not fare so well. The price spiked to over $74 shortly after launch, but by the time of this reporting, it had fallen all the way down to $1.68. So the value collapsed even as the licensing revenue flowed to the president.
There's also a family venture in the mix. Tell us about that one.
Right, it's called World Liberty Financial, or WLF. It's a family-backed venture co-founded by Trump, his sons, and the children of Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Zach Witkoff serves as CEO. PBS NewsHour and the Associated Press report that WLF earned over $500 million from selling new products, including governance tokens and something called the One United States Dollar stablecoin. Other outlets, ABC News and CNBC, put that figure between $515 and $524 million.
And that's just the token sales. Were there other earnings tied to World Liberty Financial?
There were several layers. NBC News reports more than $65 million came from the sale of equity associated with WLF. On top of that, over $290 million was classified as income from cryptocurrency wallets tied to the venture. So between token sales, equity, and wallets, World Liberty Financial became a major profit center all on its own, separate from the meme coin.
Were there still other digital assets beyond those two big ones?
Yes, the disclosure keeps going. There was more than $236 million from other crypto token sales, and nearly $197 million from an equity sale involving something called Stablecoin Holdco. CIC Digital also held digital wallets worth at least $60 million. Now, one caveat worth mentioning: some reporting suggests a blurring of lines between realized personal cash and paper gains held within these LLCs. So not every dollar is necessarily cash in hand.
Now, this is where it gets politically sensitive. Critics see a conflict here. Why?
Because these earnings coincided with a dramatic shift in U.S. crypto policy. And Trump's own position changed radically. Back in 2021, he called Bitcoin a scam and, quote, a disaster waiting to happen, end quote. But during his campaign, he flipped, promising to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the planet. So critics say his personal fortune moved in lockstep with his policy reversal.
What specific policy actions did he take once in office?
Several significant ones. He signed an executive order to support the responsible growth of the industry. Then, in July 2025, 1 year ago this month, he signed the Genius Act into law to keep the U.S. leading in digital assets. He also appointed Paul Atkins to head the Securities and Exchange Commission in April 2025. Atkins shifted the agency away from the regulation by enforcement approach of the previous administration.
So, a friendlier regulatory climate. How does the White House respond to the conflict allegations?
They deny them vigorously. The White House, through Representative Anna Kelly, asserts the president's actions are in the best interest of the American people. The Trump Organization also argues the sheer length of the disclosure demonstrates an unmatched commitment to transparency. The Trump Organization adds that the assets are managed by third-party financial institutions using automated technology to execute trades, so the president isn't personally directing them.
You mentioned the length. Just how long is this document compared to past presidents?
It's genuinely unprecedented. The disclosure runs 927 pages. To put that in perspective, Joe Biden's final report was 11 pages, and Barack Obama's was just 8. So we're talking about a document dozens of times longer than anything a recent predecessor filed. Critics, including history professor Douglas Brinkley and various Senate Democrats, say that length reflects the complexity of his holdings, not necessarily transparency.
And unlike some past presidents, he didn't set up a blind trust. Is that right?
That's correct. Trump did not divest his assets or place them in a blind trust before taking office. That's a notable contrast to George W. Bush and Jimmy Carter, who both took steps to separate themselves from their finances. Critics argue that absence of traditional ethics safeguards is exactly what fuels the conflict of interest concerns. The Trump side counters that automated third-party management fills that role.
Now, crypto dominated, but the disclosure showed plenty of other income too. What stood out?
Quite a bit on the real estate and licensing side. Mar-a-Lago earned $77 million, a 50% increase over the previous year. His golf clubs in Doral, Bedminster, Jupiter, and Turnberry each brought in tens of millions. And there were overseas deals too, including $10.4 million from the UAE, $9 million from Saudi Arabia, $5 million each from Romania, Qatar, and Vietnam.
And beyond property, there was branded merchandise as well?
Yes, and it's quite varied. Trump earned $4.7 million from branded watches alone. He also collected royalties from branded Bibles, sneakers, fragrances, and even guitars. So the licensing of the Trump name extended well beyond real estate into a whole range of consumer products, each generating its own stream of income during 2025.
There were also legal settlements listed. What can you tell us about those?
The disclosure lists approximately $86.5 million in settlements from Meta, YouTube, X, ABC, and CBS. The White House states those funds were directed toward the Donald J. Trump Presidential Library Foundation, rather than to Trump personally. And Melania Trump appears in the filing as well. She earned over $10 million from a documentary license and another $6 million from NFT sales.
So when you step back, Ethan, what's the big takeaway from all of this?
The big takeaway is that cryptocurrency has transformed the president's finances in a single year, adding around $1.4 billion and roughly doubling his net worth. It happened alongside major federal policy moves that benefited the industry he's now deeply invested in. Supporters call it transparency and smart business. Critics call it an unprecedented blurring of public office and private profit. That tension is what everyone will be watching going forward.
Fascinating reporting and a story that clearly isn't going away. Ethan, thank you for breaking it all down for us this morning.
My pleasure, Grace. Happy to be here.
Welcome back. Our next story looks at a California data plan that's worrying immigrant advocates. Chloe's been following it. Chloe, what's happening?
Thanks, Grace. As of today, July 1st, the California Department of Motor Vehicles is moving forward with a plan to share driver's license and identification data with an outside network. According to reporting from CalMatters and LAist, this is stirring up real anxiety among immigrant advocates and civil liberties groups. The concern centers on how sensitive personal information could be used, and it comes down to compliance with a federal law.
Compliance with what, exactly? And who's paying for it?
It's about the Federal Real ID Act. Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a new state budget that gives the DMV $55 million to build a data-sharing system. State officials warn that if California doesn't participate, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security could refuse to accept California state IDs at airports. So there's a real practical pressure here. Nobody wants travelers turned away at the gate.
So the legislature just went along with this?
Not at first, actually. The California legislature previously refused to approve the plan until specific protections were negotiated. So a separate transportation measure was created, developed through talks between the governor's administration and lawmakers to set up oversight procedures. The budget has already been signed, and reports indicate Newsom is expected to approve that companion transportation measure as well.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does this system actually work?
The DMV will use those funds to share California records with two systems. One is the State-to-State Verification Service, and the other is the SPEX, or SPEXS, database. Both are run by a nonprofit called the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, or AAMVA. The main goal is to let DMVs and contractors check whether someone holds multiple licenses across different states. Think of it as a way to catch duplicate IDs.
That sounds fairly routine. So where's the controversy?
A big flashpoint is how the system handles Social Security numbers. It records the last 5 digits of a driver's Social Security number. But more than 1 million immigrants in California hold licenses, including those obtained under Assembly Bill 60, and they lack a Social Security number. For those people, the system uses a placeholder, 99999, and that placeholder is exactly what has advocates alarmed.
Why is that placeholder such a problem?
Because it could act like a flag. Advocates told CalMatters back in April, that's roughly 3 months ago, that the plan amounts to a, quote, betrayal, end quote. They fear federal immigration enforcement could use the 99999 placeholder as a signal to identify undocumented residents, and from there potentially target them for deportation. So a number meant to fill a blank could end up pointing right at vulnerable people.
What is the state doing to prevent that?
The state has put several safeguards in place. Officials maintain that bulk searches are impossible, and that the system can only be queried one record at a time, using information and applicant supplies. California also says it received assurances from the AAMVA that safeguards would block access by Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. So the argument is that this is a one-at-a-time verification tool, not a searchable roster.
And the new legislation, does it add anything beyond those promises?
It does, on several fronts. It directs the Attorney General to sue participating states or the AAMVA if the data sharing terms are violated. It also requires annual public reporting on data requests and monitoring for unusual usage patterns. On top of that, the DMV must create a monitoring plan, with a draft due by February 2027 and a final version by July 2027. Those dates are still a good ways off from today.
Is there any independent check on all of this?
Yes. The legislation directs the state auditor to assess compliance with these guardrails starting in 2030. So the idea is that an outside auditor eventually verifies whether the promises are being kept. But as you can hear, that's several years down the road. And that timeline is one of the things critics have zeroed in on.
How is the governor's office responding to the pushback?
The governor's office has largely dismissed the controversy. Earlier this year, it told CalMatters that reporting on the dispute was, quote, manufacturing fear and panic with lies, end quote. H.D. Palmer, a spokesperson for Newsom's Department of Finance, said the safeguards limit shared information to the, quote, minimum necessary, end quote. So the administration's position is that the fears are overblown, and that they've built in real limits.
But advocates don't buy that. What are they saying?
Many argue the measures just aren't enough. Ed Hasbrook of the Identity Project warned the guardrails can't stop federal or state law enforcement from obtaining court orders to retrieve data, potentially in bulk. And the system could be required to keep those disclosures secret. He noted that once data is uploaded to the AAMVA, it's effectively out of California's control. That's a fundamental worry, that the state loses its grip once the information leaves.
Are all the advocacy groups completely opposed, then?
It's more nuanced than that. Representatives from ACLU Cal Action and the California Immigrant Policy Center actually thanked lawmakers for the additional protections. But they remain concerned about sharing sensitive data with an out-of-state entity. So there's gratitude for the guardrails, paired with lingering unease about the whole arrangement. It's not a simple yes or no for them.
What specifically do they want changed?
Ronald Coleman Baeza, representing the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, expressed disappointment that Social Security numbers will still be shared at all. He urged lawmakers to move the state audit up to a date earlier than 2030. That sentiment was echoed by Democratic State Senator Laura Richardson, who urged the state auditor to evaluate the activity before 2030, citing the vulnerability of the data. So the audit timing has become a real rallying point.
So where does all of this stand right now?
The budget is signed, the $55 million is allocated, and the DMV is moving forward as of today. The companion transportation measure with those oversight procedures is expected to get Newsom's approval. The monitoring plan drafts are due in 2027, and the audit begins in 2030, unless advocates succeed in moving it up. So the framework is essentially set, but the debate over how much it truly protects people is far from over.
Chloe, thanks for walking us through a complicated story.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. Turning to the High Court, the Supreme Court just put a stop to a legal detour. In a 6-3 ruling delivered Tuesday, June 30th, 2026, Chief Justice John Roberts upheld birthright citizenship, effectively putting the brakes on a second-term executive order from President Trump. The court ruled that the 14th Amendment is the golden ticket for children born in the U.S. to be citizens regardless of their parents' status, unless they are the children of foreign diplomats. However, it was not all smooth sailing for immigrants. In the cases of Trump versus Miat and Mullen versus Doe, the court ruled that federal courts cannot review the termination of temporary protected status, which could leave 1,300,000 people facing a rough road toward removal. Moving overseas, the UN chief is sounding the alarm on a cash crunch that could leave the Palestinian Refugee Agency strapped for resources. Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister is digging in, stating that troops will stay indefinitely in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. Back home, July 1st brings a wave of new laws taking effect. In Minnesota, social media platforms must now give users a mental health warning, and the state is planting seeds for the future, with an early childhood mental health grant for kids age 5 or younger. They are also handing over state land at the Cloquet Forestry Center to the University of Minnesota. Over in Indiana, the state is shifting gears, lowering the driving age to 16, while banning illegal immigrants from receiving benefits and stopping citizens of hostile foreign countries, like Russia and China, from buying property. Criminal defendants must also now be present for victim impact statements. Kansas is seeing 124 new laws, including a crackdown on the sexual exploitation of children and steeper penalties for motor vehicle thefts over $500. Students will also have to put their phones on silent, as personal electronic devices are now banned during the school day. Georgia is rebranding, renaming its department authority to the Georgia Agricultural Development Authority, and tightening up land use regulations for airport sponsors. In employment news, Virginia is expanding paid sick leave to everyone. Tennessee is telling non-compete agreements to take a hike for workers earning less than $70,000. and Connecticut is setting new standards for warehouses with more than 250 employees. Finally, in Colorado, the primary elections saw some establishment candidates hit a dead end. Milat Quiros drove a victory over Representative Diana DeGette after the American Priorities Super PAC spent $150,000 on TV ads. The group, which spent $5,600,000 across 8 primaries to back candidates critical of Israel, was fueled by $1 million donations from Omer Hassan and Mohammed Waqas Javed. It was a night of upsets that has set the stage for a key House race. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.